And joining me now is our panel, Jeff Mason, Reuters White House correspondent, Symone Sanders-Townsend, the former spokesperson to Vice President Harris and host of Symone on MSNBC, and Doug Heye, Republican strategist and former communications director at the RNC. Doug, let's get to you out of the gates right now. You're watching your party, the Republicans. The question after the drama of last week is how they begin to govern. The first test, I guess, will be what happens as it relates to the Rules Committee's votes today and all the sort of concessions that Kevin McCarthy agreed to behind closed doors.
Well, a slight correction. They did waste some time. All last week was wasted. They could have hit the ground running if they had gotten this done in one vote or even two or three, and we wouldn't have had to be up till past midnight on Friday night and Saturday morning.
2 a.m.
Well, you stayed up later than I did. So they're going to hit the ground running as best they can. It starts with the rules package, which is what happens every Congress. Obviously, there are different rules every 2 years. And this is going to be a test to see how Republicans can govern and if they can govern. And if this passes in one vote, because like voting for Speaker, if you don't pass the rule in one, you've got to change the rules and do 2, 3, 4. We don't know. If they pass this early, it shows, okay, they can organize, they can be together, because Republicans have problems. There'll be attendance issues on Fridays and Thursdays as members leave town. And there's no proxy voting, so they don't have that crutch to depend on that Democrats did for 2 years.
And, Jeff, as we watch this right now, obviously keep a close eye on the House moderates, those Republicans there, to see what they make of the Freedom Caucus's new powers and how they hope to wield those going forward right now. We just heard that Nancy Mace has said that she is a yes on rules, but there were a lot of Republicans right down closer to the middle who were like, well, wait, what is this deal about? This isn't the way we agreed we would do things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the last week was all about the right, far right, or further right, anyway, Republicans. This week and the coming weeks may be about the moderates and saying, look, we didn't sign up for this. This is not what we want. And we actually have a pretty important set of votes here, too. And that's part of Kevin McCarthy's challenge in general.
Symone, how soon before Kevin McCarthy sees the consequences of his concessions?
I mean, I think he'll start to feel them almost immediately. And he already has. The entirety of the conversation is about, that we just had, is about, well, what are the moderates going to do? He has to go and do the hand gliding and the checking, and his team has to do the checking on people who should be with him on. To be very clear, there shouldn't be all this back and forth on a rules package. These are things that are usually very procedural. Electing the speaker, the rules package, that the American people don't usually wade in the conversation on, that have now burst out into the open, that have become unnecessary struggles, if you will. And I think this is indicative of the kind of governor we're going to see from this Republican caucus.
You said they take the ball and start running, but any one of these guys could have a motion to vacate this thing. I mean, we could see this happen left and right if they don't get what they want on day one. Doesn't that handcuff this guy? As someone wrote, I thought, pretty well, aptly about this, they said that Kevin McCarthy may have won the speakership, but he gave away the House.
Right. Look, it doesn't handcuff him, but clearly handcuffs are on the wall and could be pulled out. The expectation right now is that nobody would do this anytime soon. But again, that's there. And these are rules that existed in the past. It's typically the standard had been anybody can make a motion to vacate the chair. But the reality we've seen over the past 10 years as the Republican Party has changed is people are a lot more willing to do so. So if there comes a crisis point, we won't see this next week or the week after. If there becomes a crisis point, the House will stop and they'll vote on that. That's a challenge.
Symone, where should Democrats help Republicans? Is there any place where these two are going to do anything together?
I think they have to do something as it relates to the economy. They need to keep pushing the ball forward on that. Look, I don't know about y'all, but I go to the grocery store, Peter, eggs are about $8, $9, depending on where you are going.
You come to my Trader Joe's, we can do it cheaper than that.
Oh, well, see, I've been at the Safeway. That's my problem. So they have to do something about the economy. I think the reality is, though, that there are diverging views of how to address that. This conversation comes into talking about spending and whatnot. Really, the only way to cut the drastic cuts that a number of these very conservative Republicans in the House are talking about is to cut Medicare and Social Security. Now, that is something that is just not popular with a very strong voting bloc. I'm talking about anybody over the age of like 55. So that is the kind of conversations I think that people are having right now. Democrats, on their own, though, they have to be willing to say they've done something and not just be obstructionist to a Republican agenda. So that is why you see President Biden going out there. He is going to be cutting a lot of more ribbons. There are a lot more Brent Spence bridges across the country that I think we're going to see him going to.
Well, let me ask you about that, Jeff. You and I work at the White House or cover the White House. We have small little hovels in the back corner there. It does seem like President Biden, right out of the gates right now in 2023, is focused on 2024. The announcement he made as it relates to Title 42 on immigration, obviously, upset a lot of immigration advocates and some Democrats. Republicans will obviously always be upset with the president as it relates to this topic. Is that what the tact is right now, to try to tack toward the middle as it heads toward the next year?
Couple things. One, I think on the immigration piece that you rightly mentioned, I think he was just trying to clear the decks there. Like, he knew eventually he had to address that issue. He had to go to the border. It's going to be a talking point, just as it has been for Republicans for the last 2 years. It will be if he's on a debate stage with a Republican opponent. As for the rest of his sort of look at 2024, I think part of what, like the trip last week where he met with McConnell to look at that bridge, was kind of a blueprint for the year. He wants to show that he can work with Republicans who want to work with him. And both sides, to get to Symone's point earlier, have to show that they can govern. Biden's argument will be, I've shown it. And this is what I've gotten done. The Republicans in the House will have to see if they can meet that as well.
It was a heck of a split screen, right? Watching the chaos that we're seeing on the Hill. And there's Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden basically shaking hands and celebrating along the bridge between Kentucky and Ohio. Let me ask you, as we talk about immigration, Symone, quickly. The vice president was tasked early on. She's had a tough plate, but one of the challenges that was put on her plate was this topic of migration that she was supposed to oversee. I know the VP's office would always say the topic was not the border, it was the topic of migration.
The root causes of migration. I believe I used to be that spokesperson.
I was going to say, I think that language came from you as you spoke before. But has she lived up to the responsibility that was tasked to her, the vice president, on this topic as we focus on immigration?
I think yes, but the problem is that this is such a complicated issue, right? When American people talk about immigration, they are really talking about what they see at the United States-Mexico border. And when you see an influx of individuals, when you talk to folks who live in these border towns, mayors from the border towns, it is difficult. And I think that it is important the administration recognizes that. And part of President Biden's visit, I think, was to demonstrate that he is gone to see firsthand what folks are working with. The work that the vice president has done since I have left that office has really focused a lot around diplomacy with Lopez Obrador, the president of Guatemala, but also private sector. And so the amount of money and commitments that the vice president and her team have gotten private sector companies to invest in Central North America is critically important, because an economic infrastructure, an economic engine in those places will shore up things so folks don't want to leave home.
You worked at that. You worked at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. You know the way that they think over there right now. Obviously, the select committees could be looking into, they say, Joe Biden, not Hunter Biden, whatever it is, the Biden family broadly. How concerned is the White House, or should the White House be, about these high-profile investigations as they were in likely committee hearings?
I don't think that my former colleagues should allow the oversight, and I'm going to use quotes because this is a thumb to the nose to the founders of what real oversight is really supposed to be about. Allow this, oversight to take over what they are focused on, but they do have to be vigilant and pay attention, because if not handled properly, it could really suck up all the air in the room. And so I would bet that they probably have a small task group that has been formed to focus on this very thing. A couple people, they've got a comms lead, somebody from legal, somebody who's working with folks on the Hill, and that is how they'll triangulate it. And this group of people will do that while the rest of the folks in the West Wing focus on the president's broader agenda.
Something they've been anticipating for a while now. Doug, is there a risk for Republicans of reaching too far?
Yes, I was talking to a colleague today about, we've seen new comments from Randy Weingarten saying, actually, we wanted to reopen the schools, which I would argue is not true. But if Republicans, as we're having the steering committee meeting right now for who will be the Ed and Workforce Committee chair, probably Virginia Fox from North Carolina, my member of Congress, actually. If Republicans are seen as making her, somebody Republicans have vilified for 2 years now, I think deservedly so, if they make her sympathetic, if they're seen as not just asking her tough questions, but really going after her and screaming and yelling, as we've seen quite often happen, that runs a risk. And Republicans have to be careful of this. Ask questions, don't make speeches.
Yeah, and the other question is what Americans really want them to be focusing on right now. Likely not investigations on any side. They probably want to see their pocketbook issues probably be addressed first.
They want the eggs to go down.
No doubt, no doubt. We'll bring you to Trader Joe's this weekend. We can find a good deal together. Jeff, Symone, Doug, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.